All right. Well, welcome back to Redefining Retirement, where we talk to Gen Xers in their 40s, in their 50s, who have been reinventing their lives and bet on themselves, right? That's what we want to do. We want to encourage everybody to bet on yourself because, well, you already know what it's like to bet on someone else. And then one day they leave you high and dry. But that's a whole other thing. So today I am with Michelle McKown-Campbell. And did I say McKown right? Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, Michelle McKown-Campbell.
McKown? Is that okay? Because I had an army buddy that was his name was McCowan. His name was Corey
Okay.
McCowan. So I'm like, that's why I was thinking it, but you said it. So before we get started, I just want everybody to like, subscribe, leave a comment, anything, because as you're listening to this, Michelle's going to say a lot of thought provoking stuff. I already know this. I'm promising this to you right now. So you're going to want to be listening closely and you're going to want to drop those questions in there because we're going to answer them, right? We're in this together. So go ahead and do that. And if you're on Apple and Spotify, go ahead and, hit the like button, share, give us a review, whatever you want. So that would just help us out enormously. And then we can find more Gen X people to discuss this stuff with. So that being said, Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll get into it.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Corey. I'm excited to be on this show. A bit about me. Well, my background is HR, but I am a transformational speaker and employee re-engagement strategist.
Mm.
I am all about activating the awesome with the awesome that you already have right now. And so all of my work, my workshops, my keynote speaking, any fireside chats is all about taking action and really maximizing the potential that's already within. Yeah.
Cool. And see, guys, I told you it's perfect for this podcast. Exactly what we want to talk about. So one thing we do on this podcast, or I should say I do on this podcast, is I ask everybody about like their 3 seasons of life, right? We kind of have that, maybe our late teens and our 20s where we're just kind of like, I don't know, I'm just going to try a bunch of stuff. And you think you have to have it figured out, but you don't. You just obviously know that now. And then you go into the second period of life where it's like, okay, I got a career. I think I'm onto this thing. And then you do that for, 5, 10, 15 years. And then you realize like, wait a second, maybe that's not it. And then we have our awakening, which is kind of where I'm at right now. And you're helping people at. So tell us about your early season, your first season of life and how that kind of led to your second season. All right, real quick before we keep going, if you're digging this podcast or this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you know the next time this comes out. Also, check the description because I always drop a free resource down there. Sometimes it's the notes for the podcast, some of the stuff that we discuss in there. Sometimes it's a free tool. Sometimes it's a guide. I don't know. Just depends. But check down there and see what we got for you. And let's get back to the show.
Yeah. So my first season in my early teens, although I was doing well at school, I had friends, I had passions and interests. On the outside, I looked as if everything was okay, just a normal teenager. Actually, inside, I was really dark. The color had gone from me. I
Yeah.
was convinced that everybody else was awesome and I was invisible.
Wow.
My upbringing, my dad is Jamaican black, my mom is white English. There was me in the pram, and I have a twin that was blonde with an afro blonde, but light skinned. And so in the 70s, you can imagine the looks, the murmurs, the rumor, like all of that. And so I really had a problem and a lack of understanding on really how I fit into this world and how I belonged. I had told myself I didn't fit in. I could see that everywhere because I wasn't like anybody in my family. I don't sound like anybody in my family. And I really struggled with that. And that led me to making a huge decision to leave this world. I had convinced myself that if I left, nobody would notice that I no longer was here. I was that invisible.
Oh,
And that impacted every part of my being. Now, I was at boarding school, and in the 80s, you didn't talk about these things. I didn't have language to explain to anybody how this felt. I just could see all the reasons why I didn't belong, I didn't fit in, and I didn't have anything to offer. And on the day that I decided to take my life, I was sharing a room with another girl, and I was ready. It's probably the most peaceful and calm I've ever been in my life. There was just this quiet knowing um, that the day had come. She came into the room, and as far as I understood, she looked and she didn't see me, which was my final proof that I'd made the right decision and I needed to take my life. And the next thing I heard was her shouting up the stairs, Michelle, have you seen my shoes? And that snapped me away from what I was about to do. Now, that person probably doesn't even know what she stopped in that moment because I was so full of guilt and shame. And oh, I was hugely critical that I couldn't even do that right for so many years that that impacted the next chapter of my life. And so this normal teenager just had all the proof around her. She was invisible. She wasn't good enough. All of the negative self-talk. And that stopped me from really being the person that I am now today. I could see the awesome in everybody else. I just couldn't see it in me. I missed opportunities, work opportunities because of that. That there were so many moments that I had regrets because I didn't say yes. I said, "Oh no, I can't do that. No, I've never thought about that." And I was afraid of my own shadow. And so anybody that comes to any of my workshops or my speeches will learn about the fact it's crazy. My name is Michelle. Truly crazy. It took me 40 years to realize that actually, if I tried to explain how I felt back then, it was like living in my shell. I was in the back, literally peering out, afraid of what I thought I was afraid of failure, but actually, I was afraid of standing in the light. I was afraid of saying, this is who I am and I don't have all the answers, but this is just me. Take it or leave it. I was afraid of really turning up in my full potential. I was afraid of really trying. So I just did enough to tick the boxes and get to the next stage. And I actually think most of us are doing that. We're not afraid of failure. We actually understand what that could feel like. We've been there a few times. What we don't realize is that we are living in the gray zone, the shadows, and actually we are terrified to stand in the light. And that is what my journey has been about. And that's what's got me to the phase I am in now, because now I realize that, oh my goodness, when I stand in the light, amazing things happen. There's so much awesomeness that has been created.
Yeah, it's I felt the same way. I can definitely tell different periods of my life based on like how I used to be more of a pessimist and I didn't necessarily believe I could do certain things, and so it kind of I had to go through the same thing. And I would be lying if I didn't, if the S word didn't cross my mind multiple times at a lot of different periods of my life. Not just back then, but different periods throughout. Sometimes as crazy as it sounds, you might throw the softball around in your head, like, well, thank God I haven't like ever went any further than that. But I definitely can relate to like what that feeling is because that's exactly how I was. Like you said, you're just going along, you're checking the boxes. It's like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do next, so I'm gonna do that, like one thing that reminds me is like my dad. Like I told my dad, I kind of had this urge to go into like mass communication. I was like, I want to be on the radio. I want to, do all this kind of thing. He's like, "How are you gonna make money doing that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right." You know what I mean? I'm like, I just gave in, and it wasn't until I got older where I was kind of like, you know what? Maybe that's telling me something. Maybe I should be pursuing that. But I let those kind of words get into my mind and,
Mm,
just self-limiting beliefs, basically. So
absolutely. Hmm.
so what brings you to the next part of your career?
Yeah, so for a long time, that really impacted everything I did, how I showed up, how I treated myself, how I, let other people treat myself really badly. I had no boundaries. I did what probably all of us do in our 20s. You party hard, you're trying to fit in and do all the things and be in the right places, all of that. It was really, looking back, I've got some great stories, but it was ridiculous because I
Yeah.
was trying to find myself out here through other people. It's ridiculous that it took me all these years to realize that I was already here. I just need to check in with that person and really believe in that person and see that person. And it was a day that I worked in retail for many, many years, in those early years. I took my Saturday job, having gone and done my degree in consumer product management and fashion. I took my Saturday job when I graduated and made it a full time job. I think many
Mm.
of us do this. I had no clue what I wanted to do or how I was going to do whatever. There was no big plan. So I just extended my hours. And then that gave me another reason to be really quite critical of myself because I thought, okay, I'm in debt now because of my college. Um, and I'm no further forward. If I hadn't have gone to college, maybe I would have been a manager by now. Like there's all of this negativity around me. Um, and so it impacted everything that I did that period of time. But when I was in retail, I got to the point where I was managing branches and I had a small team and I realized I loved working with the team and developing the team. So I would sit down and I would have, the things I love, the things I hate to see where I wanted to move next. I knew I didn't want to be an area manager. And so I thought maybe I should go and work in HR, like go into the corporate side of the business. And I went to a recruitment consultant and they said, you don't have enough experience. You have only ever worked in a shop, she said. I'll never forget her. She said, you've only ever worked in a shop. And I was so angry. Like it's the first time I can remember being really angry with this feedback. And so I went away and I looked at my resume and I realized I wasn't telling her what I had done. And so she just saw cashier. It didn't matter. It said branch manager. I was really not telling her because I couldn't see what was already here. Therefore, I couldn't communicate it to her. And so it was that moment that I thought, oh, hell no. Like, I know I can do this job and I know I've got the experience. So I redid my resume. And within 2 months, I was working in HR. I made it happen. And that was the moment that I realized, oh my goodness, like we create our futures and we do have control over that. But also, when I got into HR, I realized that there are many, many people, either employees or applicants, that are undervaluing themselves. They
Yeah.
don't know their true identity. They don't know their value. They're not able to communicate it. And so they miss out on promotions. They miss out on job opportunities. They don't see the reality and they don't speak up. How many people are, and I'm sure you know people that, especially young people, when they start work, they wait to be told what to do. We've
Hmm.
hired you because you have skills. And so we want your voice in this conversation. We don't want you to sit like at school and wait to be spoken to. And so I could see this happening. And I realized, oh my goodness, I am not the only person. I can see it in you. Therefore, I need to show you. And that's where this work began.
That is such a big thing because I know for me it was the same way, right? Like you always kind of wait for somebody to tell you when they want to promote you. You don't just vocalize it. You don't go and tell them. And it wasn't until I started kind of reading more entrepreneurial type books and like salesy type books where it was like, oh, if I want something, I got to go ask for it. And if I want, and if I want, and if I'm going to ask for it, I have to back it up. I have to have proof. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I guess I do this, I do that. So I just think a lot of times, and maybe it could be a generational thing too, maybe like, we're just kind of sitting in the class, go to school, finish the first hour, go to the second hour, don't ask questions, just move on, you know. So I feel like that's in it, but it's definitely an awakening when you realize you can do that. Because that happened to me. That's one thing that I did. At one day, I just went into I had gotten a different job because I asked. I'm like, hey, what about this? I'm not really liking what I'm doing here, and I'm not going to go anywhere. So I went and asked, but I backed it up. I had proof, and I think people need to realize that. And even these days, there's so many ways we can do that. It doesn't even have to just be like you walking into the HR office or you walking into the boss's office and saying like, oh, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z. It's like nowadays we have so much social media. We have so many places where we can kind of like show this stuff in public, right? So you might
Yes.
attract somebody to you like, oh, wow, I saw you're working on whatever, a website. I didn't know you built websites or whatever. You know what I mean? And you just kind of share your stuff and you can attract people. So I'm starting to ramble. So we're gonna
Not to
so
No, because you're
so
right. You're right. We have to take control, okay, of our existence. And I think you're right with regards to the generational piece. I was brought up, you don't speak unless you're spoken to. So you're waiting. I think that's what we tend to do. We wait to be told and then we take that action. I was brought up in a world, and I'm going to show my age, but we didn't have internet. Like, we
yeah.
just had the small world that was surrounded us. This was our world. And so I didn't know how to go out and research and learn, and we just didn't live in
Yeah,
that
and you
environment.
unless you were in the right place, like, right, like you were in the right city with the right library, the right
Yes.
student, or I'm sorry, the right teacher. There are a lot of things that had to kind of line up for that to even happen.
Yes.
Um, you just had the right mentor around, because you're right. Like, I didn't go into the library, like I back then it's like, sure, we had to go to the library and read, we had to learn how to read the card catalog and all this stuff, but it's just like that's a lot of work. And then they might not even have subject matter in that library about like what you're really interested in, right? Like you're not going to go like there's so much information now. I mean, for me, it's kind of swung to the other side. Now, like there's so many options. I have so many experiences and so many skills that I don't know how to boil them all down into one thing. Like it's completely flipped. But definitely back then, it was just so much harder. That's why when the internet first, they turned on the internet at my job, like 1997 ish is about the time
Uh-huh.
I remember this
Yeah.
being. And I was just like, I would stay after work and I would just be like, just clicking and just reading. And I'm like, oh my God, look at it. It was just awesome, where I wasn't necessarily like that before that because,
There
I,
wasn't a curiosity. I don't think we had the same curiosity about life and questions. Certainly, I've got an 11-year-old that if he thinks of a question, he goes and he finds the answer.
yeah,
Um, we would ask our parents or your teacher, and it's either just because that's the way it's always
yep,
been, or I don't know. It came across quite often, or go ask your dad. Whatever it was, just a very simple, like simple time, different times. I think the other thing to recognize is we were brought up in a world with parents that had one job for their entire life.
yep,
That was the standard. Whereas our world now is very different. I was
oh
saying to
yeah,
someone earlier, it's a transitional world. To be moving to have a one job for, a long period of time is almost frowned upon. As will you be able to then move into this, the new company because you've been here for so long. And so actually there is a benefit to moving and trying different things and working, now having that understanding that we can create the jobs that are available now weren't available when we were coming out of college. It's a whole new world. So actually, we're now living in this world, and I know we spoke before about retirement, and I'm like, whatever that is, because I'm not sure that's where I ever want to be.
yeah,
I don't know what that is, or whether, yeah, I really don't want to do it, because that sounds like you just stop living. But we can literally decide now and start creating our future using all of the skills, many, many skills and experiences to move forward. And now we have the technology that we can do that in situ. I can work, I live in America, North Carolina. I work with companies over in the UK. I can travel. And so I can create this whole world and this whole lifestyle around um, what I want to do that I never, like, nobody's talked about this kind of existence when I did careers. I
yeah.
remember saying I wanted to work in fashion and they thought I was crazy doing that. So this was definitely being a professional speaker, delivering workshops, anything like that wasn't even a thought. That didn't exist.
Yeah, no, that's totally. I mean, and we're preaching to the choir, but it's the same thing. Like my mom, she took a job at it's a factory job that she started 1 year after I was born. And I am 53 now, and she just retired from that exact same job last year. We're
I
talking
think it's amazing.
51 years at one company. My dad was a mechanic for a large portion of his life. I mean, towards the end, he was doing different things for a variety of reasons that he liked. He enjoyed not being a business owner for the last part of his life. Um, but yeah, it was definitely that. And I tell my kids this, my kids' friends. I'm like that. I'm like the my kids is that friend dad that people talk to and they ask me questions, and I always tell them, I'm like, they're worried. Their parents are kind of telling them like, you got to figure something out. You got to do this. You got to do that. You know what I mean? You hear that all the time from like, because I've had
Yeah.
two graduates already like in my house, and their friends are like, I don't know what to do. And I just tell them, I'm like, look, I go, there's really no way I can tell you exactly, and you're not going to know what exactly you're going to do. You just got to pick something and just start going in that direction. My daughter, she figured out nursing. So great. She's good to go for, she's good. My son is still in that like milieu. Like, I don't know. He's just trying different things, different jobs. And I always tell him, I'm like, I go, back in 1990 when I graduated, if I would have told you that I was going to be a Google ads manager, you know, from 2013 to 2005 or 2025, it's like, you'd be like, what the hell is Google? Right. And it's like, you wouldn't even know. Right. And it's the same thing. You can say that for anything. There's so many different careers. Just if you just
Yeah.
take the 90s and you look at the amount of career opportunities that popped out of that, right? Like you didn't have Microsoft, right? So you didn't have like Windows. Personal computers weren't even necessarily a thing until
Nope.
like the mid to late 90s. And then
Uh-huh.
the internet comes along, that blows up every single thing. Just it's just exponential, right? So just I just tell them, just know that there is just a myriad, there's exponential opportunity out there. You just have to know how to learn and move and do stuff, and it's just like,
Yes.
but you have to be doing stuff, right? And you
You
have
have to
to
take action.
communicate that. So no, that is super interesting, but that always gets them, right? Like
Mhm.
Google, and even my friends in like the mid 2010 2000s, they're like, you're gonna you're not gonna go back, you're not gonna fill out your resume and try to find another job, and you're gonna do what? Put ads on the internet? What? Like, what do you mean? What is that? And then they're like, and then eventually they're like, how could I do that? So it's kind of interesting, right? So um there I go again, rambling a little bit, but yeah, so like tell us about where you're at like right now and what led you to this point, because you said you speak, you've done
Yes.
so many like consultations, and being in HR, that's got to be super helpful because like you said, you've seen so many people with these different issues, and yeah, and also you learn not to be that gal that told you that that you don't have any qualifications. When I thought right away, I'm like, well, wait, she was working on the floor, so she has a very intimate knowledge of what it's like to be the person that works on the floor and may or may not be respected by upper management, right? So like you have that
Uh-huh.
empathy. So what else is there going on in your mind and moving you to your next stage?
Yeah, that next chapter. Well, for the first time in my life at 52, I think I know what I'm meant to be doing. I've
Mm,
worked it out, and I feel really good about that. And I just want to say to everybody, if you're in your 40s and 50s and you're still trying to work it out, like literally wherever we are today is the first time we've been here today. So
yep.
I'm making this up as I go along, but I do feel like I'm on the right path. The other thing I want to say is that all of that meandering of working in retail, working in multiple different industries in HR, all of that crazy experience about, how I felt as a teen and in my 20s has enabled me to do the work that I'm doing today. That's how I connect because I know what it feels like from real life experience to be in the shadows and not know my value and live it. And so that's why I coach and that's how I speak. I'm sitting here today with, I'm just wondering which way to point, but my tree behind me, because when I do keynote speaking workshops, etc., I do not just speak at people. We activate together. So I could tell you you're awesome and we can talk about what's on your resume that makes you awesome and you'll feel great. But it is a white piece of paper with black ink, pretty dull. Okay. It's a document. What you need to do is see yourself in full color. Once you see your full self in full color, and we create something like this, an awesome tree where we look at the heart of who you are, your roots and the connections that you've already got, your network, so that you can already see that you have support. There are already options for you. We build out your experiences, your skills, the impact that you're making, and then look at your leaves, which are your I ams because of all of this. When you can see yourself in multicolor and you craft this out, be it in a workshop, be it on one-to-one coaching, you can then transfer this into a resume or your next chapter plan by looking at growth and looking from a place of abundance. And so that's what I do in this next chapter is I use everything, the good, the bad, the downright ugly, and the truly awesome to work with my clients, work with organizations to re-engage. I see this as a re-engagement opportunity to re-engage with self so that you can re-engage with your team so that your organization can be the very best, utilizing the awesomeness that's already sitting there.
I think one thing that you do that maybe you didn't mention in that is that you start to instill belief in people. I mean, to me, that
Yes.
is like a huge thing, right? Because when you sit down and you do that project, you're just proving to yourself like, oh, well, yeah, that's right. I do that, don't I? And then I do this, and then you instill this belief. Not to say that that's going to be like the magic bullet and like for the rest of your life, you're going to have it all figured out, but just the fact that you understand, you move into another level of understanding, because I still have issues and self-doubts and all this other stuff to this day, but the fact that you at least made that first step and that you had that one time where you did have that transformation, like, oh, I
Yeah.
believe I can do this, then there's no turning back, I mean, that at that point, so that's a huge critical turning point, I think, that you help
It
people with.
really is. Yeah, it really is. It's gathering the undeniable proof, but not just reflecting, but actually looking forward. Because once you've done this activity, then you start to look at how you want to grow moving forward. This chapter of my life, I mean, I never had that I was going to run my own business on any vision board. It was it wasn't any New Year's resolution or it wasn't in a dream. It happened because I came to America and couldn't work.
Oh,
My
yeah, I
husband got an
remember.
opportunity to come over to America. Well, we decided, we're kind of bored back in England. We work mainly. There's a whole big wide world out there. So in our 40s, we decided to look for work abroad, and he got work to come over here. And
That was a
people
good
often say,
story. Sorry, you
yeah,
you were telling me that, I remember in our first thing, that the story about that and how it was you I think you mentioned how it was so different, like, it was way different than your expectations. Do I remember that right? I don't know,
yes,
maybe you could
yeah.
talk about that because that kinda led to the next thing too, right?
Really did. Yeah. So in our 40s, late 30s, turning 40, we were bored. Like we could just see that we can do this for the rest of our lives. I was working in HR at senior level, working round the clock in a manufacturing 24/7 plant, literally just worked. And he was very similar in engineering. We had a great bottle of wine and we came up with this crazy idea to look for work abroad. That's where it started. And I said to him, and I say to everybody else that's ever thinking about doing something crazy, until you've got an opportunity, it's just a dream. So you don't have to worry about it. And so off we went, and he found an opportunity which opened up this door to moving to America. Again, that was never on my wish list, it was on his. I didn't know anything about America at all. I didn't know where North Carolina was. I had to Google it. I just didn't. I wasn't interested. And I always thought I was moving because of him. In between that time, our son arrived. So it took us 3 years to get here. And so it wasn't just two of us being crazy, but now we had the only grandchild on my side. We were
Oh.
taking to the other side of the world. But we just thought, what is the worst that can happen? We hate it and we come back. But at least we are one of those small percentage that did it. We actually went. And I was brought up in a small town whereby I can tell you the pubs that they're sitting in now, each and every day, the bars that they go to, they will be having the same conversation about what they hate and why life is so bad. Nothing changes. And so I didn't want to be that person. I knew I needed to go and see this big wide world. So off we came to America to see. And the moment I put my feet on the soil here in North Carolina, it suddenly felt like home, like there was a bigger mission. I was here for a reason. I've never felt that anywhere else. And I realized that actually, when I think back to when I used to journal and dream, I used to dream of a place that had the blue skies. I could go to the mountains, I could go to the beach. I didn't have a name for what that place was. It was just imaginary. But when I got to North Carolina, I realized, oh my goodness, it's here. And it felt like
Yep.
here. It
Yep.
was crazy. And so because we weren't married at the time, I couldn't get a visa to work. And so I couldn't go back into HR. And I'll be honest, I was miserable in HR. I love the people side of HR. I hated the processes, the one size fits all, the policies that are set up for those that aren't going to follow process. Like it just didn't feel like the world I thought it was going to be. It was more transactional than it was transformational. And so for 3.5 years, I couldn't do that. And I panicked a little because I had really no identity other than I'm an HR manager and I'm a mum. And so I had to find something else. And in the middle of COVID happened then, pandemic. So
Wow.
just as I got my green card to say I could work, the pandemic hit me. And it was that point that I said, okay, I'm going to offer my services for free. If anyone wants to up-level their resume, come speak to me. This is a perfect time. And that's where this business kind of grew from. I worked with youth going through the juvenile justice system, and what I realized with them is they hadn't had the opportunity to talk about what they had got. They had many people telling them what they didn't do, what they couldn't do, what they shouldn't do, but not what have you got and what can you do. And so I realized that, okay, the problem isn't just in England that people don't see their identity and their value. It's over here too. I would read resumes, or friends of mine would say, I've always wished to do whatever it is, but I just can't because, I've got my stable job and I've got my benefits and medical insurance. And I think like there is always
Golden.
a way. And at what point are we going to say now's the time? Like we can't wait for the kids to leave home because will they ever leave? I don't know.
Yeah.
That might not happen. So now is the time. And if the pandemic didn't show us anything, that you just can't guarantee tomorrow. So we have to take these risks. So the work I do now is about, seeing what's in your heart. What have you always wanted to do? This work has always been with me. I was doing it without even knowing I was doing it. I always use the word awesome. Uh, Even way back then, which for an English girl is a ridiculous word to use, but that was what I was known for. A friend of mine reminded me of that. Um, so it's about thinking about what is now about, what is in my heart to do, and do it. There's always a way.
So what does awesome stand for? An acronym, a dot
Yeah.
between each one. I'm just for people that are listening. I'm just it's an
Yeah.
acronym. So
Yeah, it is. It's a framework. So it has 3 parts to it where you discover your awe, the AWE, so that you can connect the S and the O to the M and the E, which is me. And it
oh,
breaks down as you assess where you are. How can we possibly decide where we're going if we don't know where we are? That's why we do this. Assess where we really are, what the reality is. We wake up our true identity. What is the truth about the skills, the connections, the experiences that you've been involved in, both what you want to do and what you don't want to do, so that you can then engage your gifts. If you don't know what your gifts are, how can you possibly communicate them to anybody else? You can't. And so you miss out on opportunities. The S is to strengthen self belief. So this isn't a one and done. This is a craft that keeps continuing. We have to keep coming back to this. I have to keep coming back to my tree to remind myself
it's
so
a
that I can,
practice.
it's a practice, so that I can optimize my full potential.
Hmm.
We can feel that potential. We have that knowing inside that there's more to life than this, or I'm bigger than this, or I'm here for a bigger purpose. But until we tap into what our tapestry of awesomeness is, we can't see the opportunities that I'm telling you are right next to you. They're here. You just can't see them at the moment. So that you can then, the M and the E is maximize your momentum, because once you get going with this practice, it's amazing how you start to see this world as opportunity and a possibility. And then the E is how you energize your future. This is circular motion. Just like the tree here is circular. Okay. You might lose a few leaves because they're seasonal. They come back to your roots and you start building back up again. Each and every day, you can decide which part of this growth do you want to focus on, or if it's over a month, where are what are your goals in regarding to your growth? So that's what awesome is about. It's about accepting that whether you are a 1 on the scale of awesome and it's been a pretty tough day, or you're a 10 it is all awesome. And you get a choice. Do I want to stay at a 1 and I have to honor that's the best I can do and that's awesome? Or do I want to change that and have some tools in your toolkit to be able to do that? And there's so many things we can do.
I think that's such a good way to put it, and to point out that it is a cycle, or a circle, and that it is a practice, because a lot of people, and this goes for it, I'll use dieting as an analogy for what we're talking about, like personal development and all that kind of stuff. It's like a lot of people think they do a diet and it's like, okay, I lost my weight, awesome, you know but it comes back a month later, 2 months later, because you didn't put everything into practice and make it a habit. um and not to say that, like, you're learning, you're constantly learning, but you just have to get to a point where it's like, if I want to stay in shape, or if I want to not, put on a lot of weight, then I need to do, these things over and over. Yes, I'm going to stumble. Yes, I'm going to take down a half a pie on Thanksgiving, but it's like, but hey, we're back on Monday morning or whatever, and so but you have to understand that it's not like a destination. It is a practice, it's, but then that's the way it is. Cause a lot of people think that way with like success. It's like, oh, well, and I even thought that too. I remember when I went from my job mentality, like being an employee, to becoming, an entrepreneur slash, whatever you call myself today. It's like, when you're an employee, it's like, okay, I'm done at 3 and that's it. I check the boxes like you mentioned earlier, and then that's it. But when you become an entrepreneur and you want to get to a certain different level of freedom, that's when you realize you have to work on yourself all the time. And early struggles in my
Yeah.
business was because it was like, okay, I got a couple clients, that's it. I'm just going to sit back and relax. You know what I mean? I stopped, like, upping my levels or upskilling and all that kind of stuff. So just know that it's always going to be, it's a journey, it's a process, it's a practice. And you know what? It's just kind of the way things are. And that's why it's going to keep things fresh too. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
continuation, it's growth. And it's accepting of that. We have phases in life, and I love how we've been talking about the different transitions, the different phases. When we get, again, our perspective at our age, I don't know about you, but I still think of myself as a 20 something. I still talk to the 20
hmm,
somethings like I'm their age. I don't see myself as 52 at all. Now, our parents were preparing to retire, like at our age.
yeah.
Okay. I see this in my age group now as the perfect opportunity to rethink actually what that next chapter looks like, utilizing all of the experiences, all my skills, everything, and bringing it to a place whereby I can just continue till whenever, and be able to decide on the hours, etc., that I'm doing. I think that's how I see this next chapter, but it's all growth. And I think the other thing to say is it's never too late. No,
Oh,
awesome.
absolutely.
Activating your awesome. Each and every day we get an opportunity to show up in the way that we want to show up, irrelevant of what happened yesterday. Okay, you may have eaten the cookie yesterday, but today you get a chance again, if you're lucky enough to not eat that cookie and then celebrate that moment that you didn't and become aware of the things you are doing.
Name of my first album, right there. It's
What's
called
that?
Never Too Late. Never Too Late. I know it's
Never,
just a little
oh, isn't
CD.
it?
It's right there, but I'm being dramatic.
It
Um,
is. It's never too late.
my first album is Never Too Late. A lot of themes on those songs are that theme. And the other thing I was thinking too, because as you started talking about like retirement and getting older, and it also kind of goes right back to what we're talking about, the practice, is like, that's why it's important to really understand what it is that you like to do. Because if you're going to practice something every day that you hate, you're going to end up, it's a dead end, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to work out. It's just like if you're dieting, to use that analogy, if you're going to sit there and force yourself to eat kale every day, probably not going to work, but if you find foods that fit within a region, they got the right macros, they got all that stuff, it's like, and you can like that, then great. That's when you can start to gain traction. It's the same thing with the retirement talk. Find
Absolutely.
something that you know that you enjoy doing every single day. You can't guarantee you're not going to get sick of it, because if you're like me, things are going to get old and you're going to have to find something else. But at least if you know your core likes and desires, you're never going to have to, you're gonna practice for the rest of your life. So why would you ever want to retire? You know what I mean? Because you just like what you do.
Exactly.
Willie Nelson, he didn't just stop. He didn't retire from playing guitar and singing in front of people. He just keeps doing it. So
Absolutely. I don't think, yeah, I think we're meant to continue going on and serving and sharing what our knowledge now, and supporting those coming up, the next generations. There's always an opportunity, and there's a really creative opportunity to do all kinds of things. Now, I am not advocating for everybody to suddenly quit their jobs
yeah,
and go off on this
yeah,
rampage.
yeah,
But there is what we can do, and I talk to a lot of my clients about this, is when they come to me and they say, I hate my job, I can't believe I've ended up here, I want to do something completely different. Firstly, we build out the tree to understand actually what they've already got. But through that conversation, they're realizing actually the things that they love about the organization that they worked in, the people that they're surrounded in, the type of work that they're doing. Then they're talking about their aspirations of what they would like to do over, in these coming years. And then there's a plan. I mean, we can literally map out step by step actions to take to move towards that. So it isn't, do I keep working in corporate, or do I just, quit everything and move into, being an entrepreneur? But actually, how do you keep working and doing what you're doing in corporate and start seeing the positives in where you are? And we say, thank you for that awful manager for giving me all the experience and exposure so I can make sure I don't have that next time. Or thank you for overloading me with work, because these are extra things I can put on my resume. So we say, thank you,
yeah,
thank you, thank you, and celebrate all of this. And then introduce and start taking the steps towards the future so that at some point the balance shifts. So it's not one or the other. And it's going back to what you said about for young people. They don't need to decide what they're doing for the rest of their lives. Just what are you going to do for the next 6 months? Like, let's
yeah,
take the pressure off. Let's try that out. And if you learn that I never ever want to do that again, great.
yeah,
When I was in HR and I had to recruit for people in a factory, it was a vegetable factory. And I said, if I need to recruit for these people, I need to go and stand on the line and know what it means to be on the line. You'd think it would be easy to pick up 6 bags, just count to 6. That's all I had to do. And it was the worst 12 hours of my life. I've
oh
never been
yeah,
in so much pain. Those people that can do that are truly awesome. But if at least I know that I never want to be in the situation where that's my only option. So you learn a lot from what you do that don't like, just as much as doing something that you love. And so you just got to take the next step.
yep. I've definitely had a few jobs like that. That it was like, I got to get out of here. There's no way I would last a couple of weeks. I'm like, all right, once I learned how to do it, I'm out of here. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't
And
do
then
it.
you take that, and
It-
it's amazing how later down the line, that experience comes back as a gift in some other way that you can share with someone else, or you utilize it in the world that you're working. Now I can speak to operational staff on the shop floor and speak to them about the awesomeness, because I know how much it takes of just concentration, focus, determination to stand on that line and do that sort of work. I wish I could focus for that amount of time, but I
yeah,
can't. I
it
don't have those
definitely,
skills.
it,
Awesomeness.
it definitely informs everything, because everything I do the last X amount of years is like, I'm always thinking like, oh wait, if I do that, that means I might end up having to do repetitive work for long periods of time. It's like, can't go down that road. I already know. So yes, you're right. That's a win. I was thinking too, when you're thinking about the things that you should thank your manager for. Like I was like, you know, thank you for pissing me off and giving me the angst to continue
Yes.
to do this. And I definitely have two scenarios in my past where I've had a boss where basically he was the face of like me going back to school, of me doing all this stuff, right? So, good or bad, if that's, I'm not
There's a
saying it's
way
going to
to
be a
celebrate
great
it
energy
all.
source to have, but if it works, it works for a while anyway.
It's
Um,
amazing how people change their perspective doing that, though. We have winning walls, we have celebration jars, whatever it takes to start seeing the good. So, especially for, youngsters when they're in difficult situations with managers, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because if I'm asked a capability question or competency based question in an interview, I now have an example. Not going to use your name, but I have you as my example. Thank you.
Yep.
For us, it brings so much richness to the world and understanding of how to lead, how to communicate, and how to motivate others. So we say thank you for all of that craziness. I'm going to take that and I'm going to make sure that I don't impose that on
Yeah.
anybody else.
Yeah.
But I can share that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We can go through this and still succeed. And if there's anybody of our age group that's sat there thinking, oh, if only, now's the time. Like, seriously, now's the time. We can do so much.
Yeah.
Um, Everything's open to us. All doors are open to us.
Yep, this is a cheesy line, but it's true, the attitude of gratitude, right? Like, you always just keep that in mind. Um, the other thing I was thinking too while you were talking about, like, knowing, like, don't just go and quit your job tomorrow and start, like, that's always a tricky one, because I've actually had a friend that did this one time, and it worked out for him, right? Because I remember we went for a bike ride once, and he's telling me, like, he's worked at a Fortune 500 company, very he's been there for years. He's
Uh-huh.
in the upper management. And one day we go for a bike ride. And he's like, so, what would I do, if I didn't want to have to go to my job anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I just started throwing out ideas like, oh, well, you could do this, or like, there's ways to do this now. And less than 6 months from that day, we were at his retirement party. And I'm like, because he called me one day, like a month after that. He's like, all right, I know what I'm doing. I already gave my boss my notice. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, you didn't even like try to start. You don't even have an LLC. You don't have anything. You didn't even like have what do you mean? He's like, no, I'm just going to do it. I know it. This is the way to go. So, like, some people can do that. He pulled it off, and he's very
Yes.
successful with this venture that he did right now. I'm not saying everybody could do this, but it is interesting. So I don't want to ever tell people that they shouldn't. I feel like it's definitely something where you're going to have to go down this path, like something that the path that you would help people go along, where you're going to have a point where you're going to understand where it does feel good to jump off of. Like,
Yes.
because I
Yes.
had been practicing for years before I had my opportunity, and my opportunity was that they escorted me out the door, right? I mean, and it's like, but
Hmm.
I just happened to, at that point, had been through. I was in the marketing department where I worked because I was doing all that stuff on the side, and they noticed that I did that, and I went from drafting, a mechanical draftsman and engineering, into a marketing role. So I kind of had some knowledge that I built up over the years. So
Hmm.
it was easy for me to leap. So it's not a cut and dry for everybody, but I think you'll know. But you absolutely
Yes.
have to put in some work now, and you have to start working on it now. Otherwise, you're never going to have a point where you're going to know, or have to
No.
maybe take a little bit of a leap.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And to speak to that, really, no, I love that you say that because it isn't a never say never. Because I have walked out of roles. I've
Yep.
walked in the morning and I've thought, then we're done, and
Yep.
I've
I've
left
been
that
there
that
too. Yep.
afternoon. And actually, by leaving that afternoon, one in particular where I left an HR role and I just thought, I can't do this any longer. And I hadn't even got to my car in the car park when a friend of mine phoned me up and said, there's no way you know somebody that could do some HR contract work. And I was like,
Oh,
yep. I
yep.
walked straight into that. It was brilliant. And so sometimes there is something to be said about creating the space for opportunity to come in. But so often when we're looking for our next chapter, the next opportunity, firstly, we're coming from a place of negativity. We hate where we are. We hate what we're doing. And
Yeah.
so our mindset is negative. And a lot of what we've talked about today is about getting your mindset in that right place, that energized place to see the opportunity to show up in your very best self. And so it's really important to be thinking about that. But there is no you gotta in this world. You gotta do you, and only you will know if it's today's the last day that you work there and you walk, or you build up this process and you have step by step transition with your head held high, and then that balance shifts. I really do advocate for everybody being recruitment ready all the time. And
Hmm.
so when I work with my clients, I'm getting them to understand that your resume is your life story that you build up on. You don't just have a 1 page or 2 page resume ready to go. And then when you find a job, then you're trying to work out how it fits into that. There's a different way, a completely different approach that I guide my clients through so that they are recruitment ready all the time. Because you don't know who you're going to have coffee with, or someone's going to overhear that you do something, and there's an opportunity or a project you can work on. So now in the world that we live in, where you can do project-based work, we can work globally. There's all kinds of ways to create revenue. You have to be ready for that, and you can only do that by doing the work first. So that's the key.
We've talked about this a lot on this podcast. If you're listening to this, just go back to some of our earlier episodes, especially with Mike. You'll see what I mean when you go back to the catalog. But we talk about how, in the old days, it's like, hey, we have this resume and we send it and we hope that people choose us, right? Like, where now your resume, you should look at yourself as an entrepreneur. I don't care if
Yes,
if you're an employee, it doesn't matter. You should think of yourself as an entrepreneur, right? Like, and
you are your own brand.
yeah, put yourself out there. Cause like you said, when you want to be open for opportunity, just being engaged and meeting people I'm just on LinkedIn, like how we met.
Yeah.
It's like you get out there, maybe you want to put some YouTube things out there, just sharing stuff that you're learning and talking about, because slowly people are going to start coming to you and they're like, oh, I didn't know you did that. Maybe you could help me with X or Y or whatever. But you're building up this reputation and this trust, and you're doing it out in public and you're building it up for yourself, not for the peg that goes into the round hole at the job that you're at. No, it's, for you, it's for Michelle, it's for Corey, that's your own personal thing. So I
Well,
think
it's
that's
our
a
ripple, isn't it? It's the impact that we make. It's our contribution. And I think when we get to our age, it's not about success is not about how much money do we have in the bank.
yeah.
Success is so much more than that. And success for me is about the impact that I'm creating, the flexibility of the world that I'm living in, the ability to be able to be available for my son or go on a little vacation or have dinner out. It doesn't need to be lavish. It's just having that flexibility of choice. And success really, certainly for me, is being able to put for everybody I speak to or do a workshop or coach, I put a fluorescent star on my ceiling to show that their light is
Oh.
shining a little brighter.
Hmm.
So what we're talking about is creating, success and what that really means to us, but also that I know in HR they speak about work-life balance, but
Yeah.
actually it's about creating your life, which starts now. If it hasn't started yet, it starts here and now. Like create your life, the life that you want to have, and then the work that will fit into that works. Because if your life is not set out and you don't have that set up, your work can't be what it really needs to be. And right now, it's about impact. I think we're all of our age group. Once you get into your 40s, it's like, legacy. What is the difference we want to create in this world? And we all right now have skills, experiences that we're sharing with people that are just at the beginning of their journeys, that need to see that there is hope, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
And that's exactly what I'm hoping that this podcast does, because one of the reasons I started this, or at least I've come to realize this, is like I said, we want to help people bet on themselves. And I think that when we can show, like, people like you and all the other guests that I've had up to this point, because that's who I love talking to, right? I want to give everybody so much evidence that all these 40 and 50-year-olds out there, and maybe if you're in your 30s too, who cares, whatever, I mean, come and listen, but like just show that there's just so much overwhelming evidence that, what, you can change, because all these people did too, and they all have stories, different backgrounds, different ways to they come from so many different backgrounds. So that's like a huge thing. And then also too, just trying to drive home the fact that, like, you are now an entrepreneur. You are a company of one. You are, you know what I mean? It's like it sounds corporate and it sounds kind of cringy, but honestly, you kind of have to think about yourself that way. And I don't think it's necessarily a new concept either. And this is a little soapboxy probably, but um, I think before like the industrial revolution, I know I'm getting a little, probably going off the rails a little bit here. But, before we started building factories and having to have all these people and fit them into one, for one goal to build a something all day, I always think about when I read the autobiography of Ben Franklin. I know this was somewhere in the mid 2000s, and it was really eye opening because like Ben Franklin back in his day, we're talking 1700s. It's like they went to school, but only to like learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. After that was done, then it was just like, okay, we're gonna have you go work with this person, this person. Like one day he would work with the Masons, one day he'd work with this group, and carpenters, and then he just happened to settle on the printing press. So it's like, okay, great, now he could go. Right. So everybody was kind of tailored, they learned the base skills, and then it's like, okay, go figure it out. And I think that is where that's what we lost somewhere in the 1800s when we started
Yeah.
building factories. And it's kind of the way it was. I mean, India, you think of like Native Americans or like prehistoric. I mean, everybody had a role in the tribe, you know, but
Yep. We're all
eventually,
entrepreneurs working to our strengths and providing services and exchanging services with each other. And it worked.
yeah,
And
for
then the factories came
centuries.
in and they took it away, and we stopped thinking for ourselves. We thought that the only way to succeed was to work for an organization and be in this construct of, work till we die, or we are a nice handshake, thank you very much, and goodbye. When actually we were always entrepreneurs. We somehow lost those skills, which is such a shame.
Yeah, it seems, and it's like when I sit here and I try to rack my brain and try to think of like times in the past where there was situations where you had to have all these people working towards a common goal, doing the same thing every day, and I'm like, oh well, those were slaves that like built pyramids, or like you know what I mean? Like it just in any going way back. We're not just talking about American history. We're talking about like the history of time. It's like that's when that's the other things. But yeah, anyway.
That's a whole different podcast. But you're right.
It absolutely is, and it's like it's like you think back to like tribes, right? Like you had
Mhm.
looks you look like you're really good at like hunting stuff, so like you go hunt stuff, and like oh you know what you're doing a great job, you know cooking the food, so like you cook the food or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's like a modern version of that is kind of what we're going through right now, I think, and I just think it's a return to kind of the way it was. And I feel with like AI, all that stuff, and kind of taking some stuff off of our plate, I feel like there
I
could
think
be
that's
some,
really exciting.
yeah,
Because
there,
that's opening up opportunities for us to utilize the tools, and really shine bright in what we're meant to do, our purpose, and to give it a go. I mean, the risk doesn't have to be. You don't have to, no, depending on what you're going to do, but you don't have to input lots of money into quite a lot of the things we do, because there are free opportunities, free applications, free software. There's always a way, and there's
yeah,
communities that are there to support you. So I do feel like now we have so much available to make it a success, whatever we want to do. And we're in a world that it doesn't seem so crazy to just try something new.
it's again, here's my diet analogies, but it's kind of like if you look at like opportunity, like food, right? It's like we used to be starving, eat meal to meal, and like you watch like shows like I'm trying to think of what's that one where they're in the woods? Oh, Alone, right? It's so hard to get enough calories to eat because there's so little food around you. You're living in the woods in Alaska somewhere. But now we have so much abundance that like the biggest problem now is like trying to not eat too much, right? So you're trying to,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So like I feel like that same transition has happened with opportunity, right? Like you were starved for opportunity earlier on, you know, in the mid 1900s or even in the 80s, right? And now there's just so much. Now the question is, it's like, okay, how do we filter that down, and how do we find, how do we not get fat on opportunity and then get lazy and and like all this other stuff. So I don't even know. My mind works in mysterious ways. So I'm not
But you have
exactly
to do
sure
the
where that was
work.
going to go.
Yeah, but you have
Yeah.
to do the work. You have to
Yep.
sit down, we have to pause, just like the pandemic made us. We have to sit back with ourselves, which is scary, and we have to be real and honest, and we have to get to know ourselves and know what we like, what we don't like, and really go back, tap back into our hearts to know what was the big vision. If we asked our child version of ourselves, Me, it was my 6 or 7-year-old. What was the dream back then? It was always this. I
Yeah.
just didn't know it was an industry I could work in. I didn't know it was a real thing, but I always wanted to be like educating, making people feel awesome, seeing their good, what they had already.
I,
As a young person, I always wanted that. So I think it's always in us. We've just put on this modern world, you know, constructs and programming that have shut that down a little bit. So it takes time to do the work, step back into that inner child, ask the question, and then take some steps. Just take a couple of steps.
okay. I've got one more thought on that because,
Okay.
and then I'm going to have to wrap it up because I know we're like running out of time here. But on that thought, like going back, I wrote a article on my blog last week about like, creativity, like how our generation is going back to creativity. And there's all these examples of people out there that like they have like a community where they charge X amount to be part of the community for guitar lessons or crochet or you name it, like art, right? So there's people
Mhm.
making a full-time income and in some cases a very, very lucrative full-time income doing stuff that they would have been doing when they were younger, right? So like there's
Yep.
tons of opportunities. Just go to like school.com and just look through the communities on there and you tell me there's plenty of stuff on there that you could do yourself, even if it's just that creative spark or whatever it is you want to do. So again, opportunity is everywhere. So any final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up because I know it's getting long.
Yeah, the final thoughts is we all have a tapestry of awesomeness. Seriously, each and every every person. There is nobody on this planet that does not have this. And so, if you're the one person sat here thinking, "Well, that's not me," I'm telling you, you have a tapestry of awesomeness. And if you take the time to connect in with that, you'll be amazed at actually what opportunity is circling you. You just got to activate it.
Well, I don't think I want to go any further after that. I think that's like the nice bow to tie on this podcast. So last thing I'll ask is like, where can people find out about you and if they want to go further with this, exploring this part of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you've got my website, which is activatetheawesome.com, or LinkedIn, Michelle McKown-Campbell. You'll see me all over LinkedIn.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'll have a link to all that stuff in the show notes if you're listening to this, or watching on YouTube. So you'll be able to figure out, just by looking underneath the, underneath the video or the audio. So thanks everybody for listening. As far as I'm concerned, you can just find me at redefiningretirement.io. That's probably a good part or place to start. Other than that, again, I just want to, you know, encourage everybody to, start thinking about betting on yourself. I mean, that's like the key thing here. And start thinking about stuff that you want to do for the rest of your life rather than like waiting for the clock to tick tock, the drip of the faucet for the rest of your life and wait for that someday. Just start right now. Yeah. And then if you like this podcast, like, subscribe, review it. And I'm going to stop giving you more things to do because otherwise your eyes are going to roll in the back of your head. And then you're going to be like, yeah, okay. Paradox of choice, right? I'm getting a little overboard on that. So anyway, thank you all for listening. As always, I appreciate any second that you spend listening to anything that I create, because there's so much out there and well, every second that you dedicate is extremely precious to me. So thank you. Gratitude for always. Thanks again. Have a good one and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.